Often when a new manager takes over, the boss, clients, staff, or stakeholders have a number of issues that need to be addressed. Taking on the right issues can lead to success. Taking on too many and doing a poor job at them can lead to failure. In this episode, we'll discuss ways of successfully avoiding some of these potential pitfalls. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you. Virtually every new manager of a department comes into their new position being handed a set of issues or challenges their department must address. Now, all too often, the manager immediately takes on too much rather than taking the time to assess the situation and set realistic priorities for addressing the issues successfully. What the new manager wants to do is to quickly rack up some wins while avoiding any visible failures. And while speed is important, so is careful preparation.
There was a reason that a new manager is hired. It can be for a good reason. The former manager was promoted, left for a promotion, moved away, etc. It can also be for a bad reason. The former manager was overwhelmed and couldn't do the job, didn't relate to the staff, or their performance didn't meet management's expectations. It's important that the new manager discover why the last manager left and whether they have been judged a success or a failure. That will give clues as to the direction and timing that issues will need to be taken on.
Yeah, the best way for you as a new manager to get this information is through your new boss. Remember that during the interview process, your boss was trying to hire you. So even with an honest approach to the challenges, the boss was trying to place more emphasis on the opportunities rather than the challenges. Now that you've accepted the position, you'll learn why the last manager left and the strengths and weaknesses of that manager and the challenges that await you. And your job is to listen to the challenges, learn as much as you can, and begin to prioritize which are the boss's most important goals. And depending on the boss's clarity, this may be easy, but more likely you'll hear more about more than one challenge, and it's up to you to come back at a future meeting to understand which goals are most important to the boss.
That point that you're making, Rick, is so critical that you have to really take the time to understand what your boss's primary and major goals are. And sometimes it's very clear when a boss can be very clear and specific, and sometimes it's not. And just as you said, you've got to dig deeper in order to find out what you need to find out so that you can deal with it. Regardless of the reason the former boss manager left, the boss, staff, clients, and stakeholders will all have suggestions for issues that need to be taken on or can be improved. Some new leaders try to take on a number of things at the same time, thinking that they can solve multiple problems simultaneously. They are trying to send a message that winners are active and quick and able to solve diverse challenges. What this approach sometimes accomplishes is to render an organization confused and overwhelmed rather than spurring it to action. And not only is the organization confused, but your staff will think that you're confused as well.
Yeah, that's so true, Fred. Now, once you have a sense of the tasks you need to address, the next thing you need to do is to quickly but carefully assess the strengths and weaknesses of your staff in terms of those pending tasks. Also, what if any work have the staff members already done on any of these challenges? What were the results? You want to find out how much progress was made and what difficulties were encountered. You want to know what each of your staff members is currently working on, and what, if any, capacity do they have to address the current list of tasks. And what does the staff understand that the department priorities are and why? And it's important to know this because if you're going to adjust those priorities in any way, it's critical to explain those changes to the staff and get them on board with the changes.
Confusion can result if there hasn't been enough discussion with staff so that everyone understands why the decision was made and how it will positively impact each person. We will talk again and again about communication, which is so important. The manager must take this time to help even the most reluctant person to get on board. A change in direction or priorities is often hard, and communication will be necessary during the initial time after the change to evaluate the results of the change. Time spent communicating will be time well spent. Finally, you need to objectively evaluate your own ability to address the issues. It's only when the manager has a clear idea of the capacity of the department and themselves that it's possible to realistically set priorities. Once the manager has done that, they should meet again with their boss to go over those priorities to make sure they're in line with the boss's objectives. That's a critical point, to make sure that you don't leave the boss out when you think that you've got the right direction. Suppose, for example, that there's a number one issue brought up by your boss and 2 or 3 smaller issues that have been brought up by frontline workers. It may be possible to resolve one or more of the smaller issues fairly quickly as a sign that you are listening to staff and simultaneously beginning to strengthen the relationship with them. Here, the key is to talk to the people directly involved, do whatever research you need to do to understand the problem, discuss possible solutions, and only then take action.
Right. And then when it comes to your boss's number one challenge, you may feel initially that it's straightforward. But rather than coming up with your own ideas, however, it makes sense to talk with staff about the issue and get their input on ways to improve the situation. One of the things you may hear from frontline workers is that the former manager never really understood their workloads, their issues and frustrations. So when you're making a decision on how to proceed, it's important to meet face-to-face with staff, explain why you're making the decision, and how roles and various job functions will need to change, and answer their questions and concerns. And continuing communication with frontline workers will be essential to understand the successes or failures of the approach. And I would just add, Fred, that a lot of times what start out as business or process problems, if they're not handled well by the manager, quickly become people problems. And that's an entirely different kettle of fish.
That's true. And when you say, you got your boss's number one challenge, many times, on the surface, it will seem like, okay, so this is not the most difficult thing. It seems fairly straightforward that you can begin to work on. And then, as you say, when you begin to get the perspective of people who have either been dealing with the problem or who've been trying to work on the problem, it's a whole lot more complex than what you originally thought.
Yeah, we've all had that experience. I know I have, where as a new manager, I thought I understood a relatively straightforward problem, but I neglected to talk to the end user of the solution or the client that was involved or one of the stakeholders. And it turned out that my staff person had misunderstood what the problem of the end user was. And so, I was naively off and running in the wrong direction. Yeah, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, no question. And then you've also got the situation where your boss may not understand, as you go down into the workings of your department to the frontline staff, the bosses, may be looking at a higher level challenge and not understanding the detail that needs to be understood as you actually get down to your frontline workers.
Right.
Once again, prioritizing and outstanding upfront planning will help the manager to rally staff to the proper issue or issues and show staff that you're in it for the good of the organization. What is important is that the staff understand the reasoning behind the priorities you're setting and that they understand how your priorities support the strategic objectives and goals of your department. If staff don't understand the reasoning behind your priorities, and the priorities are not in line with what members of the staff may feel is important, this can lead to staff disengagement, an important topic we will discuss in more depth in future episodes.
Right, but for now, it's important that staff understand, even if they might not agree with, the reasoning behind your decisions on priority setting with regard to the issues that the department is addressing. But you also have to be open to feedback, both from your staff, but also, as we've been saying, the end users of whatever you're working on. Again, they're the ones that have to be happy. But in dealing with the staff, some managers feel like, well, I'm the boss, therefore I shouldn't have to explain the reasons for my decisions about setting priorities. Doing so undermines my authority and makes me look weak as a manager. In fact, the opposite is true.
No question. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, showing a willingness to hear, discuss, and respond to concerns of your staff, even if your decision is not what they're hoping for, makes it far more acceptable to them if they feel that they've been respected and heard. And to do otherwise, as we were saying, can lead to these feelings of disengagement. The boss doesn't, or the company don't really understand what it's like at my level, so why should I care about the boss or the company? Such feelings can greatly undermine the morale of a department, even in companies where there's a caring corporate culture. If the frontline worker feels that their boss doesn't care, it can undermine any corporate efforts. And it's equally true that a boss who makes the effort to hear and respond to staff concerns can have a great impact on employee morale and engagement.
Respect is one of the absolute critical things that young professionals are looking for. And what Rick's been talking about is the way to listen, to show respect, to let them know that they've been heard, so that in fact it works toward building trust. There are times when the overall priorities for the department may be in conflict with those of some line staff. For example, where limited resources must be given to one area over another. In these cases, it is especially critical for the manager to explain the reasons for the allocation and show how, in the broader perspective, the allocation benefits the whole department, not simply the area that is getting the resources.
In this episode, we've talked about the importance of a newly appointed manager being able to set priorities in terms of the tasks they face when becoming the manager of a new department. Often there are numerous challenges facing the new manager, and being able to set priorities and not become overwhelmed is critical. It's also important that the staff understand the reason behind the priorities being set by the manager, so that Even if they're not happy with the decisions, they feel their concerns have been heard and respected. This is critical in maintaining staff morale and engagement. We hope you have found this podcast useful and will come back again for more management mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.